today we are going to talk about the physiology of hearing. Very recently, on the 3rd of March, there was a World Hearing Day. Anybody knew about that? So, did we do something about it? What did we do? We danced on World Hearing Day. Great. So, the WHO theme for World Hearing Day this year is Hearing for All. And hearing as a sense should be cultivated by your own self such that you can take care of your own hearing. By that, WHO means that each one of you has the potential for early diagnosis and prevention of permanent disability of hearing. So, why is it important for us to understand what is deafness? Is deafness preventable? Keep it interactive. If you understand what I'm trying to ask, then reply so that we can all take this class through together. Just me coming and reading through the slides, you can very well do that in your notebooks also and in your book. So is deafness preventable? How many of you agree that it can be prevented? Raise your hand. So there are a lot of us who agree that deafness is preventable. But unfortunately, not all deafness causing etiologies are the ones that can be prevented, but a lot can. So a good hearing and ear care, which we now is known as ear care, is very, very prevalent, and it's more like an in thing right now that everybody wants to talk about it. Why? Because we know noise-induced hearing loss is preventable. We know sudden sensory neural hearing losses, if diagnosed in a timely fashion, can be prevented. We know that the age limitations, ototoxic drugs which cause hearing losses, all can be preventable. The only kind of hearing loss which cannot be prevented is congenital deafness. But now we've come a long way. We know that congenital deafness can also be treated by what? Hearing aids, and we have a very advanced form of hearing aid which is cochlear implant. So the only difference between a blind person and a deaf person is a blind person will be blind, but a deaf person will be deaf and mute. What you can't hear, you will not talk. There might be languages known to the world which we don't know, क्योंकि हमने नहीं सुनी. अगर हमने नहीं सुनी तो हम कभी नहीं बोलेंगे. So a child who is just deaf will be mute. We don't say dumb anymore, right? So a child who is deaf, by definition, will be mute because he's never heard anything to be able to say. So by one pathology or by one congenital defect, you have two major disabilities. That is why rehabilitation and reversal of deafness is very important. Now comes the role of cochlear implant. Cochlear implant is actually a medical miracle in which we implant an electrode inside the inner ear. And the electrode itself stimulates your inner hair cells and outer hair cells, which connects the electrodes to the electrical impulses, generates and sends it via the nerve. So essentially everything that your outer hair cells are doing through your auditory nerve is being done by cochlear implant, right? So a child who is born deaf, if diagnosed early, can be rehabilitated with a cochlear implant. And the good part about cochlear implant is, how much do you think does a cochlear implant in a unilateral ear should cost? Any guess? You can take a guess. How many of you think it's in the range of 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs? Okay, raise your hands. How many of you think it's in the range of 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs? Okay. How many of you think it's in the range of 5 to 6 lakhs? Okay. And how many of you think it's beyond 10 lakhs? So unilateral cochlear implant, if it is from a genuinely decent company, will cost you around 5 lakhs to 12 lakhs. And a better implant can go anywhere up to 20 lakhs, 30 lakhs and more. But the government of India has schemes in which a child who is born deaf before 2 years of age is implanted absolutely free of cost. So that is one thing which is in our hands. A child born blind is blind. You can't do anything about it. Once there is RD, what is RD? Retinal detachment, or there's optic neuritis, optic nerve damage, optic nerve dysplasia, plagia, you can't do anything. But if there's a hearing nerve damage, if there's outer hair cell damage, if there's a cochlear damage, you can implant the child very early, and that too free of cost. So all those children whom you encounter who are less than 2 years of age, diagnose them early, send them early so that they can be implanted and have a very good life. So if they are deaf, they will be mute. But if you implant it, they will be able to hear, develop their verbal skills, and can also talk. So it's actually a miracle. The problem lies when the child comes to us very late. In urban settings, the parents are very aware. You drop a utensil, the child will not turn, the parents will know there's something wrong. But in a rural setting where the parents do not give so much of attention to their kids, the child goes undiagnosed till they reach the school age. So when the child is 4, 5, they'll go to the school and the teacher will say he doesn't perform well in the class. That's when the parents will start figuring out that there's something wrong. Why? Because you know this phenomena which is known as plasticity. That if one sensory impulse is reduced, the other sensory impulses become very hyperactive. So a blind fellow will have extremely good tactile sensation. So just by putting one feet on the earth, he can tell you the weather. That is how the other senses take over when one sense is diminished. So a deaf child, what does he do? He becomes very good at lip syncing. Whatever you're saying, he's able to make it out just by the movement of your hands, movement of your eyes, because they have very good visual stimulus, tactile stimulus, perception stimulus. So the child can make do their routine activities even by being completely deaf or has had a profound hearing loss. So when do these child come to us? They come to us when they've reached a school going, which is 4 years, 5 years. That's when the teacher says he's not doing very well in the class, and the mothers, they come to us with the kid saying that he class में अच्छा नहीं पढ़ता, सुनता नहीं है, ABCD नहीं लिखता. That's when we do a hearing test and we realize that he's not responding to even 90 decibel of sound. Why am I telling you this is? If a child is coming to me at the age of 5 years and is congenital deaf, can I do anything about it? Unfortunately, no. There is something known as prelingual deafness and there is something known as postlingual deafness. What is prelingual deafness? Yes, a child who has not ever heard anything, not ever spoken anything, is born deaf. That is prelingual deafness. So if that child is early diagnosed and has been rehabilitated, he starts to learn to talk and speak. But if that child, after the age of 5 years, comes to me and says he's deaf since birth, then the brain has completely developed. Now, even if you implant or give him 1 million stimuluses, nothing will happen. Why? Because the brain has undergone plasticity. Plasticity is that all the neuronal signals that were supposed to intertwine and mingle themselves to give a perception of auditory stimulus. I'm sorry. I can. So all the neuronal signals which are supposed to be creating an auditory stimulus perception are now formed. अब अगर मैं उस बच्चे को इम्प्लांट कर भी दूंगी तो उसको कोई फायदा है? कोई फायदा नहीं. So even in your government schemes, a child who is coming after the age of 4 years ideally has no practical improvement after cochlear implant. So why waste resources, right? We also do triage when you want to spend 10 lakh rupees on a child. So because of that, the government has a scheme which is known as neonatal screening program. Any neonate born to a mother who has torch infection, born to a mother who is diabetic, hypertensive, or has any peripartum trauma or excessive blood loss or prolonged labor. All these children are screened at birth. That means a child is born and the next thing will be screened for hearing, free of cost. So there is a test known as OAE, otoacoustic emission, and BERA. So these are non-painful tests. The neonate will take that test, and what do these tests do? They are electrodes. So you place the electrodes on the brain, near the brain stem. They pick up the electrodes, then you give an auditory signal. If you get the waves, that means the child is listening. The auditory pathway is intact, so you don't have to worry. But if there is some imbalance, then you repeat the test after 3 months. Why are we doing this? So that we can catch them early. The earlier we rehabilitate, the earlier we implant, the better their hearing is going to be. right? So I'm giving you the clinical aspect of why are we here to learn the physiology of hearing. And all of this is very theoretical. You can go back to your books and read, but I will still take you through these slides. So on World Hearing Day, what was our goal this year? That every individual should be self-aware about your hearing. And one of you, I think you're doing an ICMR project. Is that girl here who's doing an ICMR project? Are you doing that ICMR project? Yes. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Sonal, yes. So Sonal is doing an ICMR project on hearing where she wants to screen all of you and see the excessive use of hearing, क्या बोलते हैं? Earpods, correct. So the excessive use of those earpods is actually dampening your nerves or not. So are you true? Did you get an approval? Great. So we'll be in touch with that, and you will all be screened with an auditory test to see how much of an hearing aid are you using, and sorry, earpods are you using. And eventually we'll tell you after 6 months that excessive use of these earpods is actually detrimental. We do not realize it right now because the body has an amazing amount of reserve. Even your auditory nerves have an amazing amount of reserve. So you keep on traumatizing. It's like आप घड़े में पानी डाल रहे हो, एक टाइम आएगा वो बह जाएगा and then it'll overflow. Once it overflows, you realize oh I've had a damage. So WHO criteria क्या है? 60 decibels for 60 minutes. That's the cutoff. अपने फोन में hearing volumes आता है, आप वॉल्यूम को बढ़ाते जाते हो, you get a message saying that don't raise volume beyond this level. Why do you get that? Because that's not safe listening. You're just trying to play with your nerves. So 60 decibel of sound for 60 minutes is okay. Now let's say you're taking a class. For example, we do online classes and our classes spans for 3 hours, 5 hours. What do? You take a break. So 60 decibel for 60 minutes, take a break for 10 minutes, go back to 60 decibel for 60 minutes. And the frequency keeps reducing. For example, you heard a class at 80 decibel. Then for the time duration you can take the class becomes 30 minutes. Then you have to take a break. So the louder that you listen, the continuity of it reduces to in duration of time. If you are listening to something at 110 decibel, guess how many minutes can you listen to for that noise? Not more than 4 minutes. तो ये जो डीजे फीजे अपन बजाते हैं उसमें 110 डेसिबल के तो बहुत ऊपर होता है. And if you're listening to that for more than 10 minutes, what's happening? You're playing with your reserve cells. Eventually, when stress bioacoustics hits you, it's going to hit you hard. So be aware. We're aware of our skin routine, we're aware of our hair routine, we're aware of our eye routine. We don't know what's our ear routine. So your ear routine is 60 decibels for 60 minutes. And it's not very difficult to achieve. So since unfortunately we could not do a lecture on hearing awareness, I'm just giving you a sort of pearls of wisdom that you all can take care of your hearing, right? Okay, so communication is hearing, which is essential to language. Localization is there. I'm sorry, these are not my slides. I'm going to read them through with you. Determination of location of unseen sources of sound. And what is required for normal hearing? Now we know we require a sound stimulus. We require a condition of stimulus to sensory organ of hearing. And we require sensory transduction of stimulus at the organ of hearing. बेसिकली ये कहना चाह रहा है कि पूरा का पूरा कान और नर्व इंटैक्ट होनी चाहिए तब आपको सुनाई देगा. और क्या सुन रहे हो? यू लिसनिंग टू अ साउंड स्टिमुलस. व्हाट इज स्टीरियोग्नोटिक विजन? ऑप्थाल का क्लास भी हो रहा है ना? व्हाट इज डेप्थ परसेप्शन? इफ यू क्लोज योर आई and you look at an object, what do you see? You see the length, you see the breadth, and you see the color. You see the texture, you see a form. But you see a depth? No. For a depth to be perceived, you need a binocular vision. अगर आपकी दोनों आंखें सेम फेस पे सेम चीज को फोकस कर रही है तब आपको उसका डेप्थ परसीव होगा. आंखें बंद करके इसका डेप्थ ढूंढने का कोशिश करो. More or less you tremble. Why? Because you get a depth of a vision only when you have binocular acuity. Similarly, it goes with your ear. So you have an asymmetrical hearing loss. आपके right ear में let's say you have an 80 decibel hearing loss, in your left ear you have a 20 decibel. 20 is not actually the hearing loss. You have a 40 decibel hearing loss. So it's an asymmetrical loss. Now you say, but right में तो चलता है मुझे, left में आप rehabilitate कर दो, hearing aid दे दो. आपने left में hearing aid लगा दिया, क्या होगा? The person will start listening, but he will not be able to localize the sound. He will not know whether I'm calling him from the left or from the right or from the back. Why? Because localization of sound, like depth perception, requires binocular activity. You have to have both your ears functioning in order to be able to localize the sound. So try doing it. हॉस्टल में जाके अपना एक कान पूरा ब्लॉक करना, किसी को बोलना पीछे से आवाज दे, फिर बताना मुझे were you able to localize the person wearing this to your right or to your left? You won't be able, right? That is why hearing aid in unilateral ear is a misnomer. You don't do that. किसी को एक आंख से चश्मा पहनते देखा है? नहीं देखा है ना? क्यों? क्योंकि एक आंख में दिक्कत है तो एक आंख में पहनो, दूसरे को चलने दो. Do we do that? No, because we need the same amount of lens, we need the same amount of vision to be able to perceive the depth. Same goes with your hearing. The problem is, deafness is actually made fun of and blindness is considered sympathetic. So I'm not here to undermine ophthalmology, please understand. I am here to tell you that we have to be aware about deafness. It's high time that we don't take it lightly. So blindness is very sympathetic, black and all cool, but deafness is also equally sorry. So we have to understand that just making fun of somebody who is deaf does not serve our purpose. We all have parents or grandparents who are aging, and a lot of times that grandparents would sit with us in a conversation and they'll ask you 2 times, क्या बोल रहा है, क्या बोल रहा है, and what will you say? आप रहने दो यार, आपको नहीं समझ आएगा. Fine. And think of that same person as being blind. He'll be sympathetic. He'll be like, बेचारे को दिखता नहीं है यार, बता दो. And if he's deaf, you get irritated, you get frustrated. That यार इसको समझ में क्यों नहीं आ रहा, 10 बार बोल दिया. What I'm saying is it's equally frustrating to be deaf. And we have to take care of our ears right now. Am I clear? Please don't go telling people that I'm undermining ophthalmology. No. Okay. So adequate stimulus, you've understood what all you need for normal hearing. What is sound? Sound is a form of energy that propagates in the form of waves. The speed of the sound depends on the medium through which the wave passes. The speed of sound in the air is 343 and in water it is 1482. That is why you can hear faster in underwater. Yes, my daughter studies in school. Yes, go through there. The sound frequency is audible to human range in about 20 to 20,000 cycles. The sound intensity is expressed by taking logarithmic ratio. Okay, we know. Amplitude and loudness. So this is important when you do again, if you don't want to listen, you can very well walk out. I told you I don't need 100 students in the class. One's also okay. Just don't murmur. I don't like it. And it's not something that I'm saying to scold. It's actually a request. I will not mind if you want to give your attendance and walk out. It's very disrespectful to giggle and mumble in a class. When I'm myself telling you, go, sit in a canteen, do your Netflix, no problem. But if you're actually here to sit and understand, then please sit and understand. And this goes for all your classes. Someday there's going to be we've all sat in your places, it's been 15 years, we've all sat in your places where you're sitting, we've all giggled and mumbled, but it's not true, trust me. It will not solve any of your purpose. If you are sitting, might as well listen. If you don't want to listen, please walk out. It will preserve your dignity, my dignity, the class's decorum. It just solves everybody's purpose. Don't talk to each other because I'm here to talk for an hour. And if you don't want me to talk, you can tell me, you can leave me. So when we do an audiometry test, we see 3 things. We see an amplitude, we see a frequency, and we see the amount of hearing loss. So what is an amplitude? Amplitude is the loudness that we measure in decibels. Like I told you, 60 decibels, 80 decibels. How much is a normal hearing? We talk in the range of 30 to 50 decibels, right? What am I talking in? It's usually around 60 to 65 decibels right now. When you whisper, you are around 20 to 30 decibels. When you're shouting, it is around 90 decibels. The DJs and the night sounds that we listen to, that is more than 110 decibels, right? So this is loudness. What is frequency? Frequency is the pitch in which you listen. So we know that human ear can listen between 20 to 20,000 hertz. Yeah, hertz. Now 20 to 20,000. But is there auditory frequency between 20 to 20,000? No. How much? Essentially, आप कितनी frequencies में सुनते हो? It is between 200 to 800. That's maximum. That is most frequently used in our day-to-day hearing. So maximum hearing loss or maximum perception of a hearing loss will happen when you have problem at this particular frequency. Okay? Impedance is the problem when you have some sort of resistance to the normal flow of sound waves. So intensity is defined as the power transmitted by the sound wave in a unit area. All of you, this row, yeah, just leave your phone for a minute, take out a piece of paper and start writing your attendance. Similarly, do that. So one piece of paper all the way till the back. Intensity is dependent on the pressure and velocity. Intensity is peak pressure into peak velocity. Displacement is produced by the sound waves which vary with frequency if the intensity is constant. So this is what I'm talking about, the amplitude and the frequency. You know, human ear can listen between 20 to 20,000. This is how we listen, and this is what I was talking about, binocular perception of sound. An external auditory canal has a maximum resonant frequency of 3000 hertz. A tympanic membrane ranges between 800 to 1600 hertz. A middle ear between 800, an auricular chain is around 500 to 2000 hertz. That is why when you have otosclerosis, you have a dip in an audiogram at 2000 hertz. So you know exactly that your stapes is fixed into the oval window. Now, what are the functions of external ear? It helps in collection of sound, it increases the pressure on your tympanic membrane, and it causes sound localization. It also acts as a resonator. We know it increases the pressure at the eardrum in a frequency-sensitive way. It helps in localization of the direction of sound. Pinna concha system catches the sound over the large area and it concentrates it to the smaller area of external auditory meatus. It increases the total energy available to the tympanic membrane. External auditory canal is open to one end. We know the other end is the tympanic membrane. The impedance of the eardrum is 3 to 4 times. 30% of incident energy gets reflected from the external ear. Efficient in conducting sound energy in the frequency range of 3 to 8 kHz. And cuts off unwanted frequency, helping in better speech discrimination. So if a tube which is closed at one end and opens at the other is placed in a sound case, and the pressure is low at the open end and is high at the closed end. That is obvious. This phenomenon in the ESC at 3000 kHz is at the concha at 5000 kHz. The two main resonances are complementary and increases the sound pressures in the range of 2 to 7 kHz. Now, because of the shape, the pinna shields the sound from the rear end. It changes the timbre. It helps to localize the sound from within the front and the back. Cues for sound localization are from the right and the left. The sound wave reaches the ear closer to the sound source before it rises to the further part of the ear. Sound is less intense as it increases. Functions of middle ear. We know what is coupling phenomena. How many of us know what is the coupling phenomena? No? Okay, so tympanic membrane has a larger surface area as compared to a stapes footplate, which has a relatively smaller surface area. So what happens when a larger surface area, which is getting vibrated, will ultimately channelize its energy to a smaller surface area? It will increase the pressure. So you are localizing and increasing the magnitude. Second, what happens is the lever action. The lever action is, the handle of malleus is longer than the short process of input. Similarly, again, what happens, the sound that is going will be able to channelize it and increase in magnitude. Ultimately, the sound which is low in amplitude will become high in amplitude by the time it is reaching the inner ear. Am I being understood? So basically, damp sound को, unorganized sound को आप organize कर रहे हो और magnitude में increase कर रहे हो ताकि आप ज़्यादा stimulate कर सको nerve cells को. That is the entire aim of the middle ear. So when we talk about conductive hearing loss, what are we actually saying? We are saying that the system which is actually helping us magnify is now damaged. Let's say we have a CS1. What is CS1? ठीक है, this chronic seborrheic otitis media. I'm talking about the inactive mucosal site, which is this perforation. आपके पर्दे में अगर छेद है तो क्या हो रहा है, पर्दा वाइब्रेट नहीं हो रहा, साउंड लोकलाइज नहीं हो रहा, अंदर नहीं जा रहा, पूरा पाथवे आपका डिस्टर्ब है, तो आपको क्या हो रहा है, हियरिंग लॉस हो रहा है. कौन सी टाइप का हो रहा है, conductive, right? Now, everything inside is working very well. If you stimulate directly a bone, you will have a good hearing. But if the sound has to travel through the inner ear, middle ear, external ear, then it's going to have a problem. So, what is the adjunctive function of external ear and a middle ear is that it magnifies the sound and it organizes the sound signals in such a way that they exactly know which outer hair cells to stimulate and which nerve electric potential to create, right? So that is why we also, it's very important to have a very good and functioning middle ear. So I have just explained in very simple language what is the function of your middle ear. We can just go through it. It has an impedance matching mechanism. It has an attenuating reflex mechanism. It physically protects your cochlea from very loud noise. That is the action of stapedial reflex. Stapedial muscle is supplied by which nerve? Facial. Good. Facial. And what does the stapedial muscle do? Origin क्या है उसका? An insertion? Very good. Yes. So head of stapes. It's originating from the pyramidal process and it's inserting into the head of stapes. What does it do? Suddenly you're sitting quiet and you hear a very loud noise doorbell. What happens? You get startled. Why? Because that very loud noise has suddenly gone into your ear, has stimulated your tympanic membrane, has increased the magnitude, and has moved your stapes with a very high frequency. So the muscle gets active. The muscle says, oh, no, don't send all the signals inside the inner ear. The inner ear will get damaged. So what does the muscle do? The muscle tightens and it holds your stapes very steady. So the stapes will not go inside your oval window and create that entire sound path. So that is known as a stapedial reflex. What is reflex? The ability of the ear to counteract a very loud noise such that you don't land up damaging your inner ear. So what does it do? A sudden sound of 90 decibel, it will make it come down to 60 decibel. That is why sudden loud noise, until it is more than 100 decibel, it rarely gives you a hearing. But prolonged exposure of loud noise is the thing that causes problem, because stapedial muscle cannot forever stay in the state of contraction. It will relax. It's a muscle of reflex. What are the other muscles of reflexes? Physiology तो पढ़ के आए हो, anatomy तो पढ़ा है. What are the other muscles that are known as reflex muscles? What are writing reflexes? नीट वीट तो लिखना है ना, पीजी नहीं करना है किसी को. So it's a very all-time favorite PG aspirant question. What are writing reflexes? सुना है इसके बारे में? Have you heard about what are writing reflexes? They are basically spinal reflexes which gives you a posture. I'm talking to you. Other side of the body will try to hold me back. What reflex is this? My brain is not telling my left side to do. These are writing reflexes, and then there are contract writing reflexes. Please go through it if you want to write your NEET exams. Okay, they are very important. They're writing 24 of them, and you have to know each reflex in detail. Okay, so phase difference effect, couple sound potentially, all this I've done. Impedance is defined as the resistance offered by a medium for transmission of sound. Impedance is defined as the resistance. Basically क्या है, cochlea जो है ना, how many terms does a cochlea have? 2. Okay, so it is basically 2 3/4. आधे से पौने 3 तक कुछ भी मान सकते हो, that it is an anatomical variation. You can have 2.5 to 2 3/4 turn of cochlea. So why is it like, you've seen a snail shell? We all have seen a snail shell. That's exactly how a cochlea looks. If you really want to see a live version of a cocktail, you can come to the ENT department. We have a specimen ready for the cocktail. And we've also shown you the tunnels because it's a very nicely dissected specimen. So what happens is, cochlear is like this. It's like a it's it's like an icing on a cupcake, if you can imagine. So there's a big turn, then there's a small turn, then there's a very small half turn. So that's how a cocktail is, and that's literally how cocktail is. What happens is that the basal turn, then there's a middle turn, and there's an apical. At the basal turn, you have very high frequencies like 8,000 hertz, 10,000 hertz, 4,000 hertz. Then in the middle turn, you have mid-range frequencies in the hundreds. Then in the apical turn, what you have, the frequencies is in the ranges of tens, like 100 hertz, 90 hertz, 10 hertz, right? Now, why am I saying is, what I'm trying to say is, the basal turn of cochlear is more likely to get damaged because it's very close to your vestibule. What is vestibule? What is vestibule, sir? कहाँ होता है? नाक में, कान में? कहाँ की बात कर रहे हैं हम? Okay, so vestibule is basically an organ responsible for balance. Why do I feel these two rows are still with me? But are you listening? So what is vestibule? Anatomy of ear हो गया, आपको पढ़ा दिया है, आपको बताया होगा बैलेंस सिस्टम में एक वेस्टिब्यूल होता है जिसके अंदर यूट्रिकल फैक्ट्री होता है. क्या होता है वो? Can anybody from the last row get up and tell me what is a vestibule? I'll just stop talking if you tell me what is a vestibule. We haven't started studying ENT, is it? I'm asking, बहुत दूर है एग्जाम? Next month. When we started ENT basically. So area of tympanic membrane relative to the oval window, I just explained this to you. I've told you what is the lever action and I've told you the shape of tympanic membrane. I'm also through with my time. Attendance हो गया सबका? So can I get the papers? This is also a very important question from your exam perspective. Phase difference potential. So we know there's a round window, we know there's an oval window, right? What is a round window? स्टेपीज हेड कहाँ पे कनेक्टेड है? ओवल विंडो पे. ओवल विंडो से क्या निकलता है? स्केला vestibuli. Then in the middle there's scala media, and then in lower part there's scala tympani. Okay, we all know this much. Good. Now scala tympani के आगे क्या है? Round window. So what happens when, like I'm talking to you right now, my sound is going inside your ear and it is going through the tympanic membrane, then it is vibrating your tympanic membrane, going to the malleus, incus, stapes, foot plate is actually pushing the oval window inside, and the pressure, the perilymph inside the scala vestibuli increases, because then the pressure will go into the scala tympani, and the pressure in the tympani increases, and then the round window comes out. समझो एक कमरा है जिसमें 10 बच्चे हैं, 11वां भूल गया तो उस वाले को निकल जाना पड़ेगा. So that is what is happening. When you push a stapes foot plate inside, the pressure increases and then the round window moves out in order to counteract that pressure. And this entire physics, what happens, the scala basal or the scala media, which has a basal layer, rhizinous membrane, lifts up. And it lifts up and it creates action potentials through which you hear. And that is the basic inner ear physiology, right? So इतना जो हमने इतना जो हमने गीत गाया है वो इसीलिए गाया है कि हमको ये समझ आ जाए कि हमारा एक्शन पोटेंशियल इन ईयर में कैसे जनरेट हो रहा है. इज दैट अंडरस्टूड? And that is the crux of this entire class. I'm just hoping that you've understood what I'm trying to teach you.